Hello everyone, my name is David. Today we are going to take a look at another real tale with you. It often happens that many people leave their homes, their cities, and move to another city for work. If they get murdered or something wrong happens to them, who takes care of them? Who mourns their loss? If something goes wrong, solving such cases becomes very difficult as there's no one around them. Today's story is somewhat similar. So, what happened in this story? Who killed whom? And how did the police solve this murder case? Make sure to watch this video till the end to find out what happened and how this case was solved. This is the story of a boy named Ankit. He lived near Delhi and came from a very good family. He had a strong passion for studying and was of a very kind nature. He doing his PhD at a university in Lucknow. Ankit's parents had passed away, and he was living alone at home. After their death, he focused entirely on his studies. Before this, he went to Lucknow to study, then to Ghaziabad. While pursuing his PhD, he made a few friends, 6 of them, in fact. After finishing their studies, they would meet, talk, laugh, and play together. Their friendship was very strong. Ankit would often say that if he stayed at home, he would miss his parents. So he decided to stay in a rented house in Ghaziabad, which belonged to one of his friends, Umesh. Ankit and Umesh had a very good friendship, so Umesh suggested that since Ankit had come to study, he might as well stay at his house. At first, Ankit refused. He said that it wouldn't feel right to stay at Umesh's house, that he wouldn't feel comfortable living in someone else's home. Umesh told him not to think that way, but Ankit insisted, saying he wouldn't stay at his house. However, after Umesh repeatedly asked him, Ankit finally agreed, saying, "Okay, I'll stay at your house, but I will pay rent. I won't live there without paying rent." At first, Umesh refused, saying, "How can I take rent from a friend like you?" But Ankit replied, "If you don't take rent from me, then I won't stay at your house." Eventually, Umesh agreed, and Ankit started living there while paying rent. Ankit didn't go back to his village because his parents were no longer there. He had no siblings and his relatives had stopped talking to him. Ankit had no one left who would ask him how he was doing, how his studies were going, how his life was, or if he was happy or needed anything. There was no one in Ankit's life who would say such things to him. Ankit then thought that if he had no relatives or family left in the village, what would he do with all the land there? He neither planned to go back nor build anything new. So he decided to sell the land. Ankit sold both his land and his house in the village, and he received about 10 million rupees. He deposited all that money in his bank account. Ankit also mentioned this to Umesh, telling him that he had sold his land and house in the village, which is why he now had this money. So, Umesh knew that Ankit had 10 million rupees. Umesh then approached Ankit and said that he wanted to start a business and needed 4 million rupees. He asked Ankit if he could help him and promised to repay the money little by little as he earned it. Ankit agreed and gave Umesh the 4 million rupees because they were friends, and Ankit had a lot of trust in Umesh. Their friendship was strong, and Ankit considered Umesh more like a brother than just a friend. Until October 2022, everything was going well, but suddenly on October 7th, 2022, Ankit disappeared. He neither came to college nor talked to his friends, nor did he call them. He didn't meet them either. As I already mentioned in this video, Ankit didn't have any family members or relatives who were close to him. His parents were not there, and there was no one who genuinely cared about him. Even his relatives had stopped talking to him, so no one was concerned about where he was or where he had gone. It had been almost 2 months since he disappeared, but no one knew about his whereabouts, nor did anyone ask about him. However, Ankit's 6 close friends were sitting together one day, and they discussed that it was unusual for Ankit to not talk to them or meet them for 2 months. He wasn't even responding to their calls. They wondered if something bad had happened to him or if he was in some kind of trouble. So initially, his friends weren't really concerned that Ankit had gone missing because, for the past 2 months, messages were being sent from his phone to his friends, so they would reply to those messages thinking it was him. And he would also post something on his social media, so his friends assumed that Ankit had gone on a trip, as usual. But after 2 months passed, they realized that they hadn't seen or heard from him at all. They started feeling uneasy, as Ankit had never gone completely silent like this before. That's when they decided to look for Ankit to find out where he was. Some of his close friends went to his house where he used to stay. When they reached there, Umesh was present. They asked Umesh where Ankit was. Umesh replied that he didn't know because Ankit had left the house suddenly and took his belongings with him. He said he tried to ask Ankit about it, but Ankit didn't tell him anything. Now, Umesh had no idea where Ankit could be. Hearing this, Ankit's close friends became very worried because Ankit had never done something like this before. He would always inform someone if he was going somewhere. Then his 6 friends were sitting together and talking amongst themselves, wondering how Ankit could leave without informing anyone. One of the friends asked when Ankit's last message was received. Everyone took out their phones to check, and when they saw the last message, one of the friends noticed something unusual. He said that Ankit's message seemed strange and poorly written. Ankit was a well-educated guy and had a good command of English. The other friends agreed that mistakes can happen when typing messages, sometimes due to autocorrect, but upon closely inspecting their messages, they noticed that all of them had received messages from Ankit that contained a lot of errors. This was unlike him, as his previous messages had no mistakes, but lately his messages were filled with them. They became worried and confused, wondering how someone as well-read and careful as Ankit could suddenly start making so many mistakes in his texts. His friends said that Ankit was doing a PhD, and a PhD isn't something that people who don't know English well can do. We need English at a good level for a PhD, and Ankit was always such a studious child, so his English was already so good that he couldn't have made so many mistakes deliberately. One friend said, "Could something bad have happened to Ankit?" He seemed scared earlier while said, but then he stopped himself and added, "Did someone harm him and pretend that he's still alive?" The group then went to Ankit's village and asked the locals if Ankit had come there. The people told them, "No, Ankit hasn't been here for a long time. He sold his land and house and left." Then his friends asked how much money Ankit got from selling the land and house. The locals informed them that he had received about 10 million rupees. This made his friends even more worried. They wondered if someone might have harmed him because he had so much money. Ankit's friends questioned all the nearby people about him and even went to his relatives' houses. But Ankit was nowhere to be found. So they returned and immediately went to the police station to file a complaint, stating that Ankit had been missing for 2 months. Initially, the police didn't pay much attention and asked, "Who are you people? How do you know him? Are you his relatives or is he related to any of your relatives?" They explained that Ankit wasn't their relative, but he was their friend, more like a brother to them. The police then said, "No worries, he must be around somewhere. He'll come back." But his friends insisted that Ankit would never leave without informing them. He always let them know whenever he was going somewhere or if he had an urgent matter to attend to. Messages were coming from Ankit's phone, but the spelling in those messages was terribly wrong, something Ankit would never do. The police dismissed it by saying, "It's just a phone. Mistakes can happen. This doesn't prove that he's missing." His friends argued, "A mistake can happen in 1 or 2 messages, but not in 20, 25 messages. All the messages we've received are full of errors, and Ankit was never this careless. If he made a mistake in one message, he would correct it in the next. Then those friends mentioned that Ankit had recently sold his house and land, and now he had 10 million rupees. When the police heard that he had 10 million rupees, they suspected something was off. The police started their investigation, first checking with the bank. They found that Ankit had been missing for 2 months, according to his friends, but money was being withdrawn from his account at various ATMs. Even recently, in December, some money was withdrawn from his ATM. The police traced Ankit's phone number and found that the locations of the ATMs where money was being withdrawn matched the locations of his phone number. The phone's location showed up in places like Rishikesh, Dehradun, and a few other spots. The police showed this evidence to his friends, pointing out that Ankit's phone was at the same locations as the ATMs where the money was being withdrawn. His friends argued that if he was withdrawing money from ATMs, there should be CCTV footage available from those ATMs. The police agreed to check the CCTV footage and found that the person in the footage was wearing a mask. When his friends saw the footage, they said that the person didn't look like Ankit at all. And when his friends mentioned this, even the police started to suspect that something was definitely wrong, especially since money was involved, and they began their investigation. The police first started investigating the place where Ankit was last seen, which was Umesh's house. When the police went to Umesh's house, they asked him where Ankit had gone, and Umesh told them the same story he had told his friends, that Ankit had left home without informing anyone, and despite his attempts to ask Ankit, he got no response. However, the police noticed something different about Umesh. He appeared scared and nervous, not making eye contact and glancing around while speaking. The police searched his house and brought in a forensic team to conduct a thorough investigation. They spoke to Umesh kindly, urging him to reveal any information he might have. After repeated questioning, Umesh finally revealed the entire story. It turned out that Ankit had good friends who filed a report at the police station, and one of them was Umesh. When Umesh discovered that Ankit had 10 million rupees in his account, greed took over him. He thought that if Ankit could give him 4 million rupees, and if he could also take 6 million rupees from Ankit, he would be set for life. Umesh worked as an orthopedic doctor, dealing with plaster casts, which could be cut with a saw. Umesh devised a plan. He decided that if he removed Ankit from his path, the 10 million rupees would be his. On October 7, 2022, Ankit came home and Umesh went to his room, spoke with him, and offered him juice laced with drugs. As soon as Ankit drank it, he lost consciousness. Umesh then brought a saw, cut Ankit's throat, and dismembered his body into 3 parts. He left the body parts in the room and later brought envelopes, planning to dispose of the body parts in a location where the police would have difficulty finding them and identifying the remains. So he scattered his pieces in 3 different places. He threw one piece at the Ganganagar Dehradun site. The second piece he threw a bit further ahead, where there was a canal. The third piece was found when coming from Agra. He scattered the 3 pieces in different places. Umesh attacked Ankit because there was no one to ask about him. He had no parents, no siblings, and his relatives didn't call him. There was no one to ask where Ankit was, what he was doing, or why he wasn't coming home or talking on the phone. No one cared if he was alive or dead, but he didn't know that Ankit had 6 very close friends who loved him very much. They knew Ankit had no one else, so whenever there was a festival, party, or birthday, they would take Ankit to their homes. Ankit was very much liked by his friends' parents, and he also loved them deeply, considering them as his own parents. But Umesh did not know that these people would reach his house while searching for him, and then from the house to the police station. Umesh then disposed of the body in different places and kept his mobile phone and ATM card. He also involved another friend in the plan. His friend withdrew money from various cities like Dehradun, Rishikesh, and Haridwar. The police found that Umesh had 4 million rupees because Ankit had given him that amount. But there were an additional 2 million rupees because Umesh had withdrawn that much money over the past 2 months. The police then faced another challenge. Ankit had no relatives or family members, so there was no one to provide information about him or how the case would progress. Umesh's 6 friends then reported the matter to the police. The police had gathered forensic evidence, including bloodstains, which were presented in court. They also recovered the weapon used in the murder. Umesh had burned the clothes worn by Ankit at that time to destroy any evidence. Umesh was then presented in court, and all the evidence was shown, which led to his imprisonment. But it was because of Ankit's 6 friends that the police found out about the murder. If they hadn't gone to the police and filed a complaint, no one would have known where Ankit had gone or who had killed him. If there were such friends in the world, no one would face any problems. And if there were friends like Umesh in the world, you wouldn't even need enemies. Such friends are enough to ruin someone's happiness. Therefore, if someone has a friend, they should ensure that the friend is like those good friends who come to help at all times, not like Umesh, who ruins happiness and is greedy when seeing money. So, this was today's story. Thank you for joining us on this journey today. We hope you enjoyed the content and found it valuable.